Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. We're looking forward to the conversation today and glad that you've all taken the time to join us for a few minutes. Want to welcome our esteemed panel here today, Wolfgang Bauer from Michigan State University and Dave Chakraborty from Wellesley College. Welcome, gentlemen. I'll give a more complete introduction of these two here in a minute. But as we get started, I just wanted to set a little bit of context for our discussion today. This will be no news. I'm trying to, kind of capture some of the key elements that we know that all of higher ed is dealing with. First off, we know there's increasing uncertainty with respect to business models and enrollment numbers, elements like that drive increasing uncertainty for us in the future. There's competing demands for scarce institutional capital resources. No surprises there. The element that for this conversation is especially salient is the aspect of campus systems reaching end of life and in need of renewal. And those can be challenges, but they can also be viewed as opportunities to reinvest and redefine how an energy system is put together. And that's kind of what we'll focus on a little bit today with Wolfgang and Dave is talking about this energy transition and how do we make that energy transition into the future and move beyond some of the technologies and operating paradigms that have been there in the past, especially as we look at the aspirational values that most institutions have with respect to energy and resource efficiency, operational efficiency with a focus towards budget certainty, and then, of course, the decarbonization and sustainability. Oh, let's see, Anderson, did I just go through all that? Apologize. It looks like we just started. I've been talking for a little bit. I'm going to start over again. Anderson, if you could just confirm. Okay, great. So it looks like we're live now. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to go back to the beginning here and talk. Anderson, would you be willing to put the slides up on the screen here? Thank you. First of all, I want to welcome our esteemed panel here, Wolfgang Bauer from Michigan State University and Dave Chakraborty from Wellesley College. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for being here. I'll give a little bit more of an introduction to you two here in a minute after we get through. Wanted to just set a little bit of context here, and I have given a little bit of this a few minutes ago, so if any of you heard it, welcome to hear it again. But basically what we want to do is we talk through the discussion today with Dave and Wolfgang. Want to make sure we're thinking about the right context here of this discussion of energy transition into the future. Of course, we all know that there is increasing uncertainty with business models and enrollment numbers and other forces that are causing increasing uncertainty in higher ed with, of course, the ever-present competing demands for scarce institutional capital resources. And the element that is especially salient to this conversation is the aspect of campus systems reaching the end of life and being in the need of renewal. This can be viewed as a challenge, or it can also be viewed as an opportunity. And both Wolfgang and Dave have experience with dealing with this aspect specifically and looking for opportunities to not necessarily double down on current technology and operating paradigms, but looking to the future for operational changes and technology changes even to take into the future, especially as we look at the aspirational values that most colleges and universities have at this point with wanting to, of course, be energy efficient with energy and other resources consumed on campus, operational efficiency, aspirations leading towards the goal of budget certainty, and of course, the goals that most campuses have of decarbonization and broader sustainability into the future. So it's in that context that we're having our discussion today, and wanted to welcome Wolfgang and Dave. First off, I'm just going to give a brief introduction here. Wolfgang comes to us from Michigan State University, where he's been on faculty since 1988 with a dual appointment at the National Superconductor Cyclotron Laboratory. He was named a University Distinguished Professor in 2007 and served as the chairperson of the Department of Physics and Astronomy from 2001 to 2013, and is the founding director of the Institute of Cyber-Enabled Research from 2009 to 2013. It's at that point that he joined the Office of the Executive Vice President for Administrative Services in 2013, where he's been leading the transformational efforts on energy efficiency and integration of renewable power sources, among other responsibilities. Wolfgang, welcome to our panel today.
Thank you.
Dave Chakraborty joined Wellesley College as an assistant vice president for facilities management and planning in 2016. And under Dave's leadership, the college has invested significantly in building upgrades and renovations across the campus, including investments in energy efficiency and putting the infrastructure in place to support heating and cooling buildings using renewable sources. This past year, Dave has led the development of a long-term planning process to guide the college to the goal of carbon neutrality by 2040, and sits on the E2040 committee that's guiding that process, where the entire campus will be able to utilize renewable energy sources for heating and cooling. Dave, welcome to our panel today.
Thank you.
So as we get started here, I wanted to first off talk about highlight to folks that we're dealing with two very different scales of campuses here. First of all, Michigan State, founded in 1855, 50,000 students, 5,300 acres, 23 million gross square feet, large on-campus central plant distribution system, 10.5 megawatt solar canopy that Wolfgang will talk about here in a minute. Very large campus. Wellesley, a very beautiful campus, a little bit smaller, about a tenth of the scale of Michigan State. And I thought this would be valuable to have you two compare for us some of the opportunities and investments that are possible, and the challenges that it brings up with this type of opportunity. So I'm going to start with Wolfgang. Wolfgang, will you take us through the journey that you've been on at Michigan State and some of the key investments that have been made there?
So first, to set the scale, our annual utility budget is roughly $70 million. We have a cogen facility that used to run on coal. It makes steam, runs it through steam generators, and generates all the electricity for campus with a peak of about 65 megawatt. And then sends the lower pressure steam at 90 psi through a good 20 miles of steam tunnels under campus to all the major buildings to provide the heating and also cooling. And this cogen idea was great in 1965 when it was put together. But since then, our electricity demand has gone up and up and up, and the steam demand not so much, simply because of better building insulation and so on. One example, we're just starting a new national lab in collaboration with the U.S. Department of Energy, and that national lab will draw an additional 18 megawatt around the clock. And so, and very little heating load. So our steam versus electricity balance has gone way out of whack. And additionally, we wanted to have a clear path to all renewable energies and reducing our carbon emissions. And so in 2010 or so, we formed a committee, and as the then chair of the physics department, I thought I should be part of that committee. And so I muscled my way in there and tried to bend the conclusions to the way that I thought were appropriate. And you can see this table on the left side of the slide, where we have these benchmarks for 2015, which we have already reached, to 2030, and eventually to come to complete carbon neutrality and 100% renewable energy. We're very far away from that, but So we've invested, between $2 and $5 million each year in energy conservation measures, and these are not even listed here. They roughly compensated our energy consumption with the growth in building square footage across campus, which is about 100,000 square foot each year. So in 2006, this baseline lists 580,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year from MSU, and it was all a coal-fired power plant. So by switching from coal to all natural gas, which was completed in 2016, we chopped a lot of this off. It's a roughly halving of the emissions. We put in an anaerobic digester that takes cafeteria food waste and animal excrement waste from our farms and turns it into biogas, which we convert into electricity and into all natural organic fertilizer. And you see that effectively reduced our carbon emissions by about 40,000 tons all by itself. In 2018, we opened this solar carport, which generates 15,000 megawatt hours of electricity per year, which is roughly enough for 1,800 households to satisfy all their electricity demand. So this was completed in 2018. In 2020, I list a new recip engine power plant. It's basically all built and it's in commissioning stage right now, and in December we'll make it fully operational. That's a new 30 megawatt plant which will save us 45,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year, and also significant fuel expenses, around $5 million per year in fuel expenses, because it helps to remedy this imbalance that I talked about earlier between the steam and the electricity production. And then we're in the final days of signing a new contract for another 20 megawatt solar array, ground mount array, which will produce something like 40,000 megawatt hours, which will go online, well, either at the end of next year or 2022. We're a little COVID delayed there. And you can see we're making steady progress. There are future projects beyond the time horizon that I can talk about definitely right now. But for example, something we're seriously considering is geothermal heating and cooling for campus. If you drill down maybe 500 to 1,000 feet, we're sitting on a big aquifer that's always 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And so in the summer, obviously, you can use that as cooling water right away. And if you do heat pump technology in the winter, you can heat. And so I see this as a really effective way of removing the last carbon that we're burning. I'll stop right there and maybe we'll come back and give a chance.
So let me ask you a question. As you've gone through this whole process, lots of moving parts, lots of competing priorities, what have you done to help prioritize the internal resources, and where in this path of reduction here have you sought help from the outside, outside the institution?
So I'm a physicist, so I like to write equations down. And one of the equations that I always use in public talks is energy is equal money. So if it costs more money, then you're wasting more energy. And so we're only doing these investments if the net effect is that it saves us money. And I think for all efforts to establish new renewable energy resources on campus or anywhere in the economy, it has to save you money at the same time. And so then the question is, does it make financial sense for us to put up initial capital and then get it back slowly later? Or does it make more sense for us to have somebody else put up the capital and then have them earn the return on the money? And the answer is different for each project. So that solar carport array was built in a power purchase agreement. So no MSU capital was used. And to be honest, I don't even know what it really cost, maybe on the order of $20 million that were put in by outside investors, by Innovators, a solar developer out of South Bend, Indiana, and Altera out of British Columbia. And this new 20 megawatt solar array that I list at the very bottom will also have a power purchase agreement structure, and I can't disclose who that's with yet because the contract is not signed. The other two plants, we found it more advantageous to use our own money because the terms just penciled out better for us. So whenever somebody can come in and save us money, and save us more money than what we could do by using our own capital, we'll jump at it.
For the remaining portion, you talked about ground source or other technologies, maybe moving off of a steam system to lower temperature system. Can you imagine a scenario there where an outside party may be able to help get you to that finish line, or what would be the requirements there, or the factors that might put that one way versus the other?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking to outside partners all along, and we've received several proposals and commissioned outside studies to see if we can find attractive financial terms. So far, I haven't been able to pull the trigger, partially also because, there's a $300 million hole in our budget right now from this current COVID crisis. And, the reserves that we have in our endowment, for example, can't really make up for that because most of that endowment money is really spoken for because we have to follow the donor wishes. So you can't just say, oh, we have a $4 billion endowment, just use that money. It doesn't work that way. So we had to put the brakes on some of these plans. But I'm sure we'll recover. We've been around for 160 some years and we'll be around for many more. So for anybody, from the private capital market that is looking at these opportunities, they all know that this is a long-term investment. It has to go over 20, 30 years. And we will be around, which is not something that you can say for example, for internet companies. When AOL was the largest company in the world, right?
Right. Yep, and they're not there anymore. Okay. Thank you, Wolfgang. We'll come back to you in a moment. Dave, let's turn to your campus for a few moments. I'm going to put this up. Would you be willing to describe some of the considerations that are being made at Wellesley right now?
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Rob. So Wellesley College is a much smaller college compared to MSU. We have about 2.5 million gross square footage, about 2,000 students here. And the students and the faculty and the community in general are very interested, and they want to do more to look at the sustainability issues. But for whatever reason, we started late. We started in 2015 with a new sustainability plan. I came to the campus right around that time, and a new president was here too. And we have done a methodical process where we have established as the aspiration to become net carbon neutral by 2040. And one of the first things we did, and by the time when we came here, we also had a cogeneration plant that burned natural gas, and we had steam demand for heating and also for cooling using steam absorption chillers. But the cogeneration plant was really almost obsolete. We were scavenging parts from one genset to run others. And so we took a brand new look at the overall energy concept, how we use energy on the campus. And what we have done is, and it's kind of shown in the grayed out area, we have taken out the cogeneration plant. We are not generating power any longer on campus, and we are using the Massachusetts grid power. it is much cleaner uh, because there is from the power that we get from our municipality, they are about 35 to 40% of their power is coming from one green source or the other. So we are really we are fortunate in that sense. And then our buildings are 100 plus years old, very inefficient, energy inefficient buildings. So one of the first things we did was to figure out what energy efficiency projects we could do. And then now we have launched a project that will be campus-wide, that will be finished next summer. And after we complete all those projects, we will be cutting down our electricity use by 20%. Now, since the buildings are very inefficient and we have a high pressure steam system, so our plan is over the next 10 years to upgrade the heating system to low temperature hot water system and couple that conversion with building renovations. And we have a huge deferred maintenance backlog in our residential halls and in academic buildings, and we want to combine renovations in these buildings with and at the same time convert the plant to a low temperature hot water. We are figuring that by 2030 we should have the majority of the campus converted. Not all buildings, but at least all the major buildings will be converted by that time frame. Then, and the blue chart up here represents the reduction in greenhouse gas emission coming from the steam plant, from natural gas use. And as we renovate buildings according to a schedule, we should start seeing the greenhouse gas emissions decline. Around 2030, the campus will have to make a choice. And whether we are going to install a geothermal system. Right now, based on the studies we have done, geothermal wells seems to be the most attractive technology. But who knows what other technologies will come forward in the next 10 years, what the pricing is going to be. And so around that time, the campus will have to make a choice of what will be the source of producing that heat. Is it going to be geothermal? Is it going to be a very efficient natural gas boiler plant? What that is going to be, or some other technology that we have not even thought of or talked about today. And then after the decision is made between 2030 and 2040, that conversion of the plant itself will happen. In the meantime, we will continue to procure electricity from green sources. And then around by 2040, we should be able to reduce the greenhouse gas emission from the college itself by close to 90%. And then at this point, we are predicting that carbon offsets will be required because it is not cost effective given the current rates to have a plant that is 100% that will, like the heating plant will be using 100% sources like geothermal wells, but we'll have to see what happens in the next 20 years from a cost standpoint. But at this point, the plan is to buy balance of the greenhouse gas emission will be offsets, to buy those offsets and to become carbon neutral by 2040. And that is essentially, that plan is depicted by the dashed line. And you see that by 2040, we are dropping to net zero carbon. So that's really an overview of the plan itself over the next few years. Like I mentioned, by next year, we will be implementing all the energy efficiency, primarily lighting projects throughout the campus. By also next year, we are abandoning our steam absorption chiller plant, and moving over to all electric chiller plant. That project is in design right now, and that will then help us transition from using natural gas to produce the cooling energy to using cleaner electrical energy. And then after that, like I mentioned, we will begin the building renovation projects. So the challenges that we face, the age of the building, these are historically significant buildings. So we do not have the luxury of tearing these buildings down and building fresh. And of course, the challenge of the budget, where the capital dollars are going to come from. And we can discuss that later. So that's an overview.
Let's dig into that right now, Dave, as we look at the various places where I think you're going to have to spend the money. You've got a bunch of money that has to go into the buildings. You've got the distribution network, and then the central systems that have to take place here.
Yes.
You've talked about energy efficiency investments in buildings. Is that an overlap with this set of money, or is this a new set of money that will have to be available for investment and conversion of buildings?
So the number that is shown here, I should make 2 points. Number one, it does not include the energy efficiency projects that are going on right now. And also this $60 million represents the delta that we have to spend to convert the buildings from a steam system, a high pressure steam system today, to a low temperature hot water system. So that's the delta. The actual building renovation and upgrade number is much larger than this. It's close to about $500 million. So 500 plus this 60 is what we are projecting will cost us to renovate the buildings and get them ready for the low temperature hot water system.
So as you think about that future set of capital requirements, I mean, is that something that you as an institution is going to have to bear alone? Is there a way to partner with outside people on that, or what are your thoughts on that? What have you come to as you've evaluated your opportunities?
It's a very interesting question, and we have just started to discuss this issue, to delve into this issue. We are fortunate. We have a very large endowment, $2.5 billion endowment for a college with 2,000 students. But just like Wolfgang mentioned, a large percentage of this endowment is already spoken for by donor wishes.
Uh-huh.
But still, we have a large endowment that we could potentially dip into. Our board always asks this question, that is it more cost effective for us to get debt? And fortunately, our debt rating is excellent debt rating. So we can raise dollars from the market at a very low interest rate. And so the cost of the debt service versus using someone else's dollars, and what's the trade-off? Now, we all know if the colleges, universities can fund their own projects and on a net present value basis on a 20, 30-year project, we will be able to do better from a capital standpoint. But if we look at the overall cost, the life cycle cost, could an outside company come and operate the plant at a lower cost than what we can? Our operation at Peace University College, our operating costs are higher than peer institutions and experiences that I have had in other institutions. Just given the benefits, given the wage scale, they are higher. And so could an outside entity come in and provide us with the same service at a lower cost? And then when we look at the life cycle cost of us borrowing the money versus a third party coming and funding a project, which is the best option. So because we do not have any constraint of borrowing money, we will have to look at it as an overall cost to determine if partnering with a third party is in our best interest or not.
Yeah, it's going to be a big consideration, and a topic we continue to hear more and more about as we hear about engagements like or decisions like the Ohio State University has made and Iowa University. Wolfgang, I think you know a little bit about a couple of those projects or relationships that have been set up in the marketplace. What are your thoughts on those types of concession agreements? And Dave talked about maybe someone else could operate at a lower cost. What are your thoughts on how to evaluate those and how Michigan State would think about an evaluation like that?
So we're being approached all the time by several outside vendors that propose similar deals to our Big Ten brothers, Ohio State and University of Iowa. And some of these deals are more attractive and some are less. So the guy who has the office next to me is our vice president of finance, and he just a couple of years ago hired one of the main architects of the Ohio State deal with Engie. And they're talking about, can we do similar things with, doesn't have to be with Engie. There are other companies with the necessary capital that could do this and are approaching us. So we are open to these considerations. If it makes financial sense for us, then we will do this. In our energy conservation efforts, for example, we have partnered with GE. So we have these GE Spartan Energy Treasure Hunts where we have people from GE come in, people from our utilities that are experts, and occupants of the building, faculty, staff, and students that spend weekends together to see what energy conservation measures make sense for a given building. And so we've done, I think, 16 buildings, 16 of the major buildings so far. That requires outside capital. We're really welcoming this. In a lot of things, it makes sense to engage outside partners. In others, like Dave said, you just look at net present value. Does it make more sense to use our own capital? Or right now we're building a STEM teaching building that's $110 million. So that money is then not available for utility improvements. So there's, you have to talk to the provost, you have to talk to all the stakeholders and figure out what's the best course. So if somebody comes in and says, like for Iowa State, here's $1 billion for your endowment, that sweetens the deal. It may not be in our long-term interest, certainly in our short-term interest to accept that. Long-term, maybe not so much. So, one has to see what really works and what doesn't.
As you have internally discussed these various options, I'm sure some are like the Ohio State deal, which is a concession agreement where you really retain the ownership of the assets and someone else basically operates them for you, versus a alternative situation where someone would come in and acquire the assets and basically become the utility for you. Pros and cons to either of those, or other aspects you've looked at that could inform some of the parties listening?
Yeah, there is no one solution that fits for every university and college. It even depends on the local price of real estate. So before we went live, we talked about me being in Frankfurt running this board meeting. And the University of Frankfurt has the fortunate situation that they're sitting right in the financial center of Europe now, of the European Union. And their older buildings have a real estate value that's incredibly much higher than what their actual value is. So over the last couple of decades, they transitioned outside of the center of the city and build a brand new campus, and then energy conservation measures are a lot easier to implement. For us, we have a 5,300 acre campus that's a rectangle, and that's mainly farms. And so real estate price is a lot different. We have a lot less difficulties with cleaning up our utility streams because we don't have to work for a city. It's all our own. If we want to dig up a street, we don't have to seek permission. We just do it. And so, I mean, all I can say is we're really actively listening. I have almost weekly conferences now, Zoom calls with outside vendors that try to engage us and present their financial models. I have 2 or 3 active conversations right now on additional renewable energy resources on the solar front, wind also, and as I said, geothermal.
Great, thank you. Dave, anything you want to add to that? I've got another question for you if you don't. Anything you want to pile on to those comments with?
I second Wolfgang's comments. From our end, we will be very open to listening to vendors, and my recommendation to the vendors is that their audience are not facilities. Their audience are CFOs and presidents and board members who ultimately will make a decision based on the dollar part. And just like Wolfgang mentioned, energy is equal to dollars. And that is the argument that needs to be made about whether the college will move forward with a proposal or not. So
Great.
It's basically a financial presentation.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that clarification. And looks like we had a little issue with your microphone there, Dave. So we'll see if we can boost that back up. While we're working on his microphone, Wolfgang, let me ask you another question. Many of the participants in this conference, some are from higher education, but many are from the outside. As you think about the constraints and opportunities that are available to higher education, any advice you'd want to give to potential service providers of how better services or better things could be provided to higher ed that are more win-win situations for everybody involved? Anything come to mind along those lines?
Well, I mean, we only talked about utilities, but there's also, for example, dormitories. And if you previously have invested in, let's say, new malls, that business is dead, I think. And if you need to park your capital somewhere, look at college dormitories. A concession model definitely works. Ohio State famously did this parking deal. Those are opportunities. Utilities can probably run at a much larger scale, can run utility operations for individual campuses better than what places like ours can do, where we historically have had our own microgrid since 1894, and where we have not really had a brand new power plant since 1965. So there is lots of opportunity for investment. And as I stressed previously, we are not afraid to sign 30-year contracts, and our partners are not afraid to sign long-term contracts because they know we will be around in 30 years. And so I see lots of opportunities for investment that really makes sense for both partners.
Dave, as you have considered, by the way, do a sound check here, Dave. See if you're better.
Let's see if this is this
Yep,
better.
That's great.
Perfect. Yes.
Yep. Dave, as you think about your opportunities, and Wolfgang, I'll ask you the same question after Dave here, and we're coming up on the end of time, so kind of getting to final questions here. But Dave, as you think about the opportunities at Wellesley, and again, the topic here, the title of this session is 21st Century Energy Transitions. As you think about guiding Wellesley into the future, what are the key elements that you have in mind from an operational perspective, from a technological perspective, investment perspective as you go forward? What are the things that you want to make sure that you enable the campus to implement in the future, and make sure you don't preclude the campus? What are the things that you consider as you go through that process?
So I think there are two key parameters, two indicators. One is that we want to be net carbon neutral by 2040 or sooner, if possible, in a cost-effective manner. And number two, by the sweetest spot would be if we can become carbon neutral at a lower cost. If we can somehow do that, and by lower cost, I do not mean lowest capital cost. I mean over the period, the life cycle cost, if that's the lowest, that's the sweetest spot. Now, if that's not possible, then what is the delta that we'll have to pay to reach that carbon neutrality will be a key indicator. There are a number of technologies out there. There are a number of opportunities out there that we, in a college situation, do not even know of, cannot even think of. We are now talking about battery farms on campus today, which even 2 years ago was too expensive for even for us to consider. So I would encourage firms to be creative, bring technology choices in front of us, backed up with financial projections, and let's have a discussion.
Great, thank you. Wolfgang, same question for you.
So I stressed repeatedly, energy is money. I will only support green energy installations that actually save us money. Fortunately, that's fairly easy right now, because even at historically low gas prices, it costs us 6.3 cents a kilowatt hour, all in costs, capital, maintenance, fuel, personnel, 6.3 cents a kilowatt hour to generate electricity from natural gas. It was fairly easy in that new 20 megawatt installation to beat that price significantly. Right now, I'm hesitant to invest more in solar because we have 30 megawatt, and that's a fairly large swing when clouds move over, and we have to somehow balance that. So the two top items on my wish list are, battery storage. Dave has correctly pointed out the prices have come down significantly, so that now it starts to become an economic proposition, and then a geothermal power plant. And so these are my top two priorities, I would say, next to energy conservation measures, of course, which always will be ongoing.
Right. Yep. Take it off the top as much as you can before you invest in the
Exactly.
asset.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, any closing thoughts here before we finish up? We've got, looks like 1 minute left.
Well, my university's colors are green and white, so go green.
Yep, easy to tie those two things together. Dave, anything from you?
I am just absolutely excited about the opportunities that are in front of us, and I'm looking forward to discussing these issues further with everybody.
Great. Well, thank you all for participating. Wolfgang, Dave, look forward to further conversations in the future. Really appreciate your leadership and paving the way for many others to follow. We'll talk again soon.
Well, thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.